Let me tell you something uncomfortable. The nice guy doesn't lose because he is kind. He loses because he is predictable. And nothing kills attraction faster than predictability. You were told women want good men, polite men, available men, emotionally open men, men who explain themselves, men who reassure constantly. Yet somehow, the cold one, the distant one, the emotionally unreadable one, the man who walks away first, he wins. Why? Is it because women love villains or because they love power? There is a difference, and if you don't understand that difference, you will always be chosen second. The lie you were sold. Society trained you to believe that attraction is about goodness. But attraction has never been about goodness. Attraction is about tension. Tension is created by uncertainty. Uncertainty is created by emotional independence. The so-called villain is not attractive because he is evil. He is attractive because he is not emotionally begging. He does not chase validation. He does not explain himself. He does not overinvest. He does not seek approval. He behaves like he has options, and options signal power. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." People misunderstand this. He wasn't glorifying cruelty. He was describing psychological leverage. In attraction, emotional leverage is everything. The man who needs less controls more. Why nice often feels weak. Let's break something uncomfortable. Kindness is attractive, but neediness disguised as kindness is not. Most nice guys are not kind. They are bargaining. They give attention expecting affection in return. They give loyalty expecting validation. They give time expecting exclusivity. That is not kindness. That is covert negotiation. And humans, not just women, can smell negotiation from miles away. It feels heavy. It feels clingy. It feels unsafe. The so-called villain doesn't negotiate. He chooses, and choosing is power. The dark triad effect. Psychology talks about something called the dark triad. 1. Machiavellianism. 2. Narcissism. 3. Psychopathy. Studies show people with mild dark triad traits often appear charismatic, confident, and dominant in short-term attraction scenarios. Why? Because they display emotional detachment, high self-belief, social boldness, fearlessness of rejection. Notice something. These traits are not about hurting people. They are about inner certainty. The villain archetype carries certainty, and certainty is intoxicating. Emotional supply and scarcity. The average man floods a woman with availability, constant texting, instant replies, oversharing, over-explaining, over-complimenting. There is no mystery, and mystery is oxygen for attraction. The villain does something different. He creates scarcity, not by playing childish games, but by genuinely having a life, purpose, mission, ambition, discipline, boundaries. He does not orbit around her world. She enters his world. That shift changes everything. The polarity law. Attraction is polarity. Masculine energy moves forward. Feminine energy responds to direction. When you become overly agreeable, overly accommodating, overly soft in your frame, polarity collapses. The villain archetype maintains frame. He doesn't collapse under emotional pressure. He doesn't apologize for having standards. He doesn't beg to stay. He lets go. And here is the paradox. The one who can walk away rarely has to. Fear versus respect. Now listen carefully. You should never aim to create fear. Fear without respect becomes toxicity. But here's the brutal truth. When someone knows you won't tolerate disrespect, their behavior changes. The villain archetype has boundaries sharp as knives. He doesn't threaten. He simply withdraws. And withdrawal from a high-value presence creates psychological discomfort. Humans chase what they might lose, not what is guaranteed. The validation trap. Most men become emotional employees. They work for approval. They ask, did I do enough? Am I good enough? Does she like me now? The villain archetype doesn't apply for the job. He assumes he qualifies. That assumption shifts his micro-behaviors. Slower speech, calm tone, direct eye contact, minimal over-explaining, relaxed body language, confidence without seeking applause. And humans are drawn to internal authority. The shadow principle. Carl Jung talked about the shadow. Every human has a hidden, aggressive, dominant, assertive side. When you suppress it completely, you appear incomplete. The villain archetype integrates the shadow. He can be kind, but he can also be ruthless when necessary. That balance creates depth. Flat personalities don't attract. Contradiction attracts. Why drama creates chemistry. Emotion intensifies memory. Calm stability creates peace, but unpredictability creates spikes. Spikes create emotional imprinting. The villain archetype is unpredictable, not chaotic, but not overly transparent either. He reveals slowly. He doesn't spill his entire story on day one, and the brain loves unfinished puzzles. The power of non-reactivity. Here's one of the most Machiavellian principles of attraction. The person who reacts less controls the frame. If she tests you, if she teases you, if she withdraws slightly, and you panic, you lose. The villain archetype stays grounded. No emotional spike, no overcorrection, no pleading. Calm indifference is psychological gravity. But here is the danger. Many men misunderstand this. They try to act like villains. They become rude, cold, insensitive, arrogant. That is insecurity wearing a leather jacket. True dark energy is silent. It does not shout. It does not prove. It does not perform. It simply exists. The real question, so do women love villains? No, they are attracted to strength, emotional stability, mystery, direction, boundaries, non-neediness. The villain archetype just happens to embody these traits unapologetically. You don't need to become evil. You need to become centered. And centered men do not chase. They select, because attraction is surface level. Obsession is psychological. And obsession does not come from kindness. It comes from emotional instability mixed with perceived value. Read that again. Emotional instability plus perceived high value, psychological fixation. The so-called villain archetype triggers both. The intermittent reinforcement effect. There is a concept in behavioral psychology called intermittent reinforcement. It is the same principle that makes gambling addictive. If a reward comes every time, the brain adapts. If a reward comes unpredictably, the brain becomes hooked. Most men give consistent validation. Every message gets a fast reply. Every insecurity gets reassurance. Every silence gets chased. There is no tension. But the villain archetype, he does not flood attention. He gives warmth. Then he returns to his world. He shows interest. Then he disappears into purpose, not to manipulate, but because his life is not centered around approval. And that rhythm creates curiosity. Curiosity becomes anticipation. Anticipation becomes mental occupation. Mental occupation becomes obsession. The walkaway power. Here is the rule most men fail to understand. Attachment follows investment. The more someone invests emotionally, the more they value the connection. Nice men overinvest first. They give too much certainty too early. The villain archetype waits. He observes. He allows her to lean in. He does not confess feelings prematurely. He does not rush exclusivity. He does not overpromise, and if disrespect appears, he withdraws calmly. No drama, no speeches, no emotional breakdown. Silence is more powerful than argument, because argument shows you are trying to convince. Silence shows you have already decided. And when a high-value presence leaves, the void speaks louder than words. Emotional unavailability, misunderstood. Now listen carefully. Emotional unavailability is often toxic when it comes from trauma or avoidance. But controlled emotional pacing, that is power. The villain archetype does not reveal his entire emotional depth instantly. He layers it. Humans bond through discovery. When everything is visible immediately, mystery dies. And mystery is fuel. The brain is wired to chase unfinished stories. If she feels she has not fully figured you out, her mind keeps returning. The danger of explaining yourself constantly lowers perceived status. Why? Because you subconsciously position yourself as someone seeking approval. The villain archetype speaks less. He does not justify every action. He does not defend every decision. He does not clarify every silence. Ambiguity creates intrigue. Intrigue creates mental replay. Mental replay strengthens attachment. The tests. Every dynamic has tests, not malicious tests. Psychological calibration. Small provocations, delayed replies, playful teasing, mild withdrawal. These are unconscious ways humans measure emotional strength. If you react emotionally, you fail. If you stay centered, you pass. The villain archetype passes because he does not fear loss. And the person who fears loss less holds more power. The scarcity law. Scarcity increases value. This applies to money, to art, to attention. If your time is always available, it feels cheap. If your energy feels limited and selective, it feels premium. The villain archetype does not overexpose himself. He has mission, gym, friends, ambition, silence, focus. He is busy building, not hovering. That independence shifts the entire dynamic, because now she must qualify for your time. The status signal. Attraction often follows perceived status. Status is not money. It is internal certainty. It is how you move, slow, measured, unbothered. The villain archetype does not rush. He does not feel silence nervously. He allows pauses. Silence creates tension, and tension is chemistry. The psychology of challenge. Humans value what feels earned. If attraction feels too easy, the brain discounts it. The villain archetype does not make himself impossible, but he is not immediately conquered either. He challenges lightly. He disagrees calmly. He does not pedestalize. Pedestalizing destroys polarity. Equality creates comfort. Slight tension creates spark. Dark charisma. Charisma is not loudness. It is controlled intensity. Eye contact that lingers half a second longer. A voice that does not shake. A smile that appears slowly. The villain archetype is emotionally regulated, and regulation feels safe. Ironically, what appears dangerous on the surface feels stable underneath. That stability is attractive. Why drama feels addictive? Here is a truth most avoid. High emotional swings create bonding, fight, passion, distance, reunion. Each swing releases chemicals in the brain. Intensity creates imprint. Nice men try to avoid all tension. The villain archetype does not create chaos, but he does not eliminate tension either. He allows friction. Friction creates fire. The frame control. The strongest psychological position in any interaction is frame control. Frame means who defines reality in this interaction. If she says, "You're acting distant," the weak response, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." The strong response, "I've just been focused." That's how I operate. No apology. No defensiveness. Just statement. You define your world and invite her into it. That is frame. But here is the warning. If you attempt to fake this energy, it collapses. If you withdraw artificially, if you ignore deliberately, if you pretend to have options, your micro-expressions will betray you. True villain energy is not performance. It is detachment from outcome. When you are okay with losing, you stop behaving desperately, and desperation is the true attraction killer. The obsession loop. Let's summarize the mechanism. Step 1. You show strength and direction. Step 2. You do not overinvest emotionally. Step 3. You create mild unpredictability through independence. Step 4. You withdraw calmly when standards are crossed. Step 5. She begins investing to maintain connection. Investment creates attachment. Attachment creates fear of loss. Fear of loss creates pursuit. And pursuit intensifies emotion. That loop feels like obsession, but it began with one thing: you not needing the outcome. Women do not love villains. They respond to power dynamics. They respond to emotional security. They respond to mystery combined with strength. The villain archetype simply exaggerates these traits. If you remove cruelty, if you remove manipulation, what remains? Calm dominance, purpose, boundaries, self-respect, non-reactivity. That is not villainy. That is mastery. Now we enter the deepest layer. Because everything we discussed so far, scarcity, mystery, non-reactivity, frame, they are surface tactics. The real game is deeper. It is about power, not power over someone, power over yourself. And here is the truth most men are not ready to hear. The villain wins not because he dominates women. He wins because he dominates his impulses. That is the secret. The illusion of the bad boy. Let's destroy the fantasy first. The reckless, the emotionally unstable, the jealous, the possessive, the chaotic. That man does not create attraction. He creates trauma. And trauma can feel intense. But intensity is not love. And instability is not power. The illusion of the bad boy chemistry is built on volatility, unpredictable affection, sudden distance, explosive emotion, passionate reunion. The nervous system confuses anxiety for attraction. That confusion creates addictive dynamics. But addiction is not admiration. Remember this line carefully. What feels intense is not always valuable. The true dark archetype is not emotionally chaotic. He is emotionally controlled, and control is rare. The Machiavellian absence rule. Here is a principle rarely spoken about openly. Presence creates comfort. Absence creates reflection. When you are constantly available, you become background noise. When you withdraw strategically, not to punish, but to refocus, your absence amplifies your presence. But here is the key. Absence only works when your presence had weight. If you brought no depth, no direction, no grounded energy, your absence will not be felt. The villain archetype builds gravity first, then distance increases value. Emotional volatility versus emotional power. Many men mistake moodiness for mystery, silence out of ego, distance out of insecurity, coldness out of fear. That is weakness disguised as dominance. Emotional power is different. Emotional power means you can feel deeply, but you do not lose control. You can desire strongly, but you are not ruled by desire. You can walk away, but not out of anger, out of clarity. That clarity is terrifyingly attractive because most people live in reaction. Few live in decision. The frame of the unmovable man. There is a psychological hierarchy in every interaction. The one who adjusts more submits more. The one who bends constantly loses polarity. The villain archetype bends rarely, not because he is rigid, but because his standards are defined before the interaction begins. He does not negotiate his identity. He does not change values to impress. He does not overcompensate to avoid loss. And when someone senses that you cannot be emotionally manipulated, respect increases. Respect sustains attraction longer than excitement ever will. Why walking away is the ultimate test. Here is the brutal equation. If you cannot walk away, you have no leverage. Neediness destroys mystery. Desperation dissolves dominance. The villain archetype understands something fundamental. Connection is desired, but self-respect is required. When disrespect appears, he does not argue endlessly. He does not beg to be understood. He simply reduces access. Access is privilege, and privilege can be revoked. That calm withdrawal communicates more than emotional speeches ever could. The dangerous attractiveness formula. Let's compress everything into a formula. Dangerous attractiveness is built on self-control, outcome independence, scarcity of attention, clear standards, unpredictable depth, non-reactive presence. Remove cruelty, remove manipulation, remove emotional harm. What remains is psychological authority, and authority attracts. Why women respond to edge. Now we approach the controversial layer. The villain archetype has edge. Edge means he is not entirely safe in the boring sense. He is disciplined but not soft, kind but not submissive, engaged but not attached. There is slight unpredictability in his emotional timing. That unpredictability creates dopamine spikes. The human brain seeks stimulation. Stimulation combined with stability creates magnetism. Too much stability becomes dull. Too much chaos becomes dangerous. The villain archetype balances both. Dark edge, stable core. That contrast is magnetic. The shadow integration. Every human has suppressed aggression, suppressed ambition, suppressed dominance. When you eliminate your shadow completely, you become harmless. Harmless men are safe, but rarely desired intensely. The key is integration, not cruelty, not harm. Integration. You can be gentle, but you are capable of hardness. You can be calm, but you are not weak. When someone senses you have depth beneath the calm surface, they lean in, because depth creates intrigue. The outcome detachment secret. Everything collapses without this. Outcome detachment. If your happiness depends on her response, you lose frame. If your mood depends on her attention, you lose leverage. If your confidence depends on validation, you lose authority. The villain archetype wants, but he does not need. That emotional separation creates stability, and stability feels powerful. People gravitate toward those who are emotionally self-sufficient because dependency feels heavy, self-sufficiency feels strong. The final Machiavellian principle. Now listen carefully. This is the final rule. Power is not about controlling others. Power is about controlling your reactions. The one who controls reactions controls perception. The one who controls perception controls dynamics. You do not need to become dark. You need to become disciplined. You do not need to become cold. You need to become centered. You do not need to act like a villain. You need to remove desperation. When desperation dies, mystery is born. When mystery is born, curiosity follows. When curiosity follows, attraction grows. So, do women love villains? No, they respond to strength, boundaries, mystery, emotional stability, purpose, non-neediness. The villain archetype simply exaggerates these traits dramatically. But the real lesson is not to become darker. It is to become stronger internally. Because the most dangerous man in any room is not loud. He is not chaotic. He is not emotionally explosive. He is calm. He is grounded. He is unshaken. And he knows he can walk away. That is power. And power, when balanced with character, creates magnetism. Not fear, not toxicity, but respect.